And it's not just in Pakistan, but also in the Western African country of Niger, which has a long history of being colonized and dominated by France. The country had a government in place that the United States government loved. The United States government put military bases there, trained its leaders, trained its military, had all kinds of long-standing connections with the political elite of that country. And within the last month, there was a coup led by military leaders that overthrew the government that had become highly unpopular, in large part because of their inability to protect the country against attacks by Islamic extremists, and other reasons as well. And similar coups had just happened in the neighboring countries of Mali and Burkina Faso. So you have 3 countries now in that same region that have undergone pretty similar coups, all of which led to governments more hostile or at least less cooperative with the United States than the ones that they replaced. So they took Victoria Nuland, who we've been planning for some time to just devote an entire show to, about who she is, what her history is, where she came from, what she thinks, what she's done, how she just keeps rapidly climbing up the ladder of power in Washington, while her husband and her family are the highest level neocons who've worked with Bill Kristol for a long time, cheering every U.S. war. That's who they sent to Niger to try and threaten this new military leadership, that if they don't immediately give up power and reinstate the U.S. puppet, there's going to be a big price to pay. They're going to lose all their support. They're going to lose all their finances. Who knows what else she threatened. There is a regional alliance of other countries led by Nigeria, which is the biggest economy in Africa, that is very close to the United States, threatening war, invasion of Niger if they don't immediately reinstate their prior government. And the governments of the neighboring countries in Western Africa who have undergone similar coups, Mali and Burkina Faso, have said that they will involve themselves in that war on the side of the new government in Niger if that U.S.-backed alliance actually does invade. So there will be a serious regional war. The region is on the brink of that kind of a war. And I don't know, for me, the last person I would send to try and diffuse tensions was Victoria Nuland. But that's who they sent. She's fresh off her new promotion. She's now the Deputy Secretary of State, the #2 person in the State Department behind Antony Blinken. You heard Darren Beattie say, and I absolutely agree, that it's almost inconceivable to imagine that the State Department effort to pressure Pakistan to get rid of Imran Khan was not done with the direct supervision and approval of Victoria Nuland. She is a coup monger. She goes around the world dictating to other countries who their leaders should and shouldn't be. That's why Dick Cheney loved her. That's why people like John Bolton love her. It's why both political parties, except for Donald Trump, continue to empower her whenever they get into office. It doesn't matter who you vote for. You can vote for Republican or Democrat. She went from Bill Clinton to George Bush to Barack Obama, was out of government when Trump was there, and then back into government at the highest level under Biden. You can vote for whatever party you want, and unless Donald Trump wins, she's going to be running foreign policy for the United States. That's what we're always being told. The two parties can't get along. They hate each other. They have nothing in common. Somehow Victoria Nuland is beloved by both. Here is a political article from this week on her trip to Niger, where they told her they wouldn't even meet with her. Quote, Niger coup leaders refused to let senior U.S. diplomat meet with the deposed president. The deposed president is in prison, like Imran Khan is. If you ask the U.S. government, they're imprisoning Imran Khan, they're eliminating all civil liberties, they're crushing dissent, they're imprisoning and killing journalists, the U.S. government will say, that's not our business, that's Pakistan's internal affairs. Because the U.S. government likes the government of Pakistan that's doing that. But when it comes to Niger, we can't tolerate despotism. We can't tolerate an attack on civil liberties. We want to visit this president who's in prison because he's our friend. They refuse. Quote, they were quite firm about how they want to proceed, Victoria Nuland said. A senior U.S. diplomat said coup leaders in Niger refused to allow her to meet Monday with the West African country's democratically elected president, whom she described as under, quote, virtual house arrest. Acting Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland also described the mutinous officers as unreceptive to U.S. pressure to return the country to civilian rule. That's exactly what they did in Pakistan, but the opposite. Pakistan had civilian rule, and now they have military rule, and the United States government demanded that that happen. And now they're pretending in Niger to be offended by that. Quote, they were quite firm about how they want to proceed, and it is not in support of the Constitution of Niger, Nuland told reporters. She went to that country, and she started accusing them of, you're not following your Constitution, everything you're doing is wrong, and we're angry about it, we're the United States, and you better change what you're doing, or you're going to face our wrath. Nuland characterized the conversations as, quote, extremely frank and at times quite difficult. As the Wall Street Journal noted, that's diplomat speak for we got into a huge argument and it produced nothing of any consequence or value because we couldn't agree. Nuland spoke after a 2-hour meeting in Niger's capital with some leaders of the military takeover of a country that has been a vital counterterrorism partner of the United States. In speaking to junta leaders, Nuland said, she made, quote, absolutely clear the kinds of support that we will legally have to cut off if democracy is not restored. I just want you to think about this for a second. Victoria Nuland is saying that under U.S. law, if there is a coup in another country whereby a democratically elected leader is removed and replaced by military rule, she can't do anything about it. The law says that the U.S. has to stop giving aid to that country. And yet, in Ukraine, Victoria Nuland got caught demanding and engineering the removal of that democratically elected president. And in Pakistan, the State Department of which she's a part engineered a coup. They demanded that the democratically elected civilian leader be removed and replaced with a military junta, and promised that if you do that, you will get all the rewards of U.S. assistance. What happened to the law when it comes to Pakistan that says if there's a coup, the United States is legally barred from giving aid? Politico goes on, quote, if the U.S. determines that a democratically elected government has been toppled by unconstitutional means, federal law requires a cutoff of most American assistance, particularly military aid. I mean, just the double standards are just so glaring. They're so glaring. But they never have to account for them, because if you are a journalist, one of the fringe, marginalized journalists who goes to the State Department or the Pentagon briefings or the White House briefings and confronts them on this, all the other journalists will laugh you out of the room. They'll laugh along with the spokesperson. There's that African reporter, I believe his name is Simon Bekta, who has been going to the press briefings with Karine Jean-Pierre and asking very adversarial questions, and the press corps hates him. They've yelled at him before. They've demanded he apologize to her. They want to take away his press credentials. Being adversarial to the U.S. government and its spokespeople under Joe Biden is impermissible. It turned Jim Acosta into a celebrity. He wrote a best-selling book depicting himself as being Julian Assange. He put a big picture of himself on the cover, the price of telling the truth in Trump's America. But now, if you don't go and do any of that, you're considered a loser, because that's not what real journalists do. Here's the Wall Street Journal article from today that focuses on one particular general in Niger who has long been a favorite of the U.S. government. They thought they could use their long-standing relationship with him to basically make clear to the military junta that it's in their interest to do what Victoria Nuland demands. And he stuck his middle finger up at them. Whether that's because he no longer feels pressure to obey U.S. demands, or because he believes it's in his own personal interest to side with the new leaders of Niger is unclear, but the polling we showed you that was published by The Economist makes clear that the most trusted country in Niger is not the United States or France or China, it's Russia. And the Wagner Group and Russian operatives are all over Africa and have succeeded in getting a lot of these countries on their side. both in terms of the war in Ukraine and beyond, to the point where traditional U.S. allies are now laughing in the face of Victoria Nuland and saying, we don't care what you have to offer or what you threaten. The Wall Street Journal article, at the center of Niger's coup is one of America's favorite generals. Brigadier General Moussa Salou Barmo, long courted by Washington as a partner against Islamic extremism, has emerged as the main diplomatic channel between the U.S. and the junta. Can we put the article up on the screen, the text of the article? What stung perhaps more sharply were televised images of one particular man, Brigadier General Moussa Salou Barmo, among the coup plotters. Barmo is a guy that the U.S. military has courted for almost 30 years. He is a guy the U.S. sent to Washington, D.C.'s prestigious National Defense University. He is a guy who has invited American officers to his home for dinner. He's a guy in charge of elite forces crucial to stemming the flood of al-Qaeda and Islamic State fighters across Western Africa. Quote, Brigadier General Barmo, a U.S. defense official said just a few months ago, is the guy. In the wake of the military revolt, the U.S. has suspended its training of that country's forces and cut some other military assistance to Niger. Should the State Department formally declare the uprising a coup, American law would require further reductions in military aid. The U.S. has vowed to continue food and other humanitarian assistance. Barmo is well aware the coup could cost him critical combat support. No more joint training, tactical advice from the U.S. Green Berets, or American drones sending real-time surveillance. If that is the price to pay for our sovereignty, then let it be, Barmo wrote to the Wall Street Journal a few days after the coup. He didn't respond to further questions for this article. That is the United States' most reliable ally in Niger saying, we don't care what you have to offer. Our sovereignty is not for sale. This is really a reflection of declining U.S. standing in the world. And so much of it is due to their obsession with the war in Ukraine, but a lot of it is to do with the fact that this kind of interference in the internal affairs of other countries on every continent on the planet for many, many decades now has created so much anti-American sentiment. Imagine what they hear when the United States constantly stood up in 2016 and 2017 and said, how dare the Russians interfere in our sacred democracy? That is something that countries do not do to each other. That makes sense to the press corps and to a lot of followers of the Democratic Party. It's for domestic consumption, that propaganda is. It's laughed out of the room almost in every other country on the globe, at least outside of Western European capitals. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.